Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is Monday, the 10th of June, 2019, 7th of Sivan, 5779. It is Isru Chag Shavuot, the day after Shavuot. Hope everyone out there had a wonderful holiday, wonderful Chag, actually in the United States and around the world. Anywhere outside of Israel, today is also Shavuot. Today's the second day of the Chag, so perhaps you will be listening to this podcast on Tuesday for those of you who are celebrating. Hope you're doing well. Get in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it's Joshua Hasten. Check out my page, Josh Hasten, Israel Advocacy and Journalism. On Twitter at Josh Hasten and on Instagram as well. Last week I did not do a show. I was traveling. So I apologize for not being on the air last week. And since it's been a while, we are going to get caught up on everything going on here in the news from Israel and the Middle East. Top story on today's front page of the Jerusalem Post: Palestinian Authority slams Friedman, that's David Friedman, Ambassador Friedman, after remark that Israel has right to annex parts of what they call the West Bank. The Palestinian Authority, as well as anti-settlement groups such as Peace Now and J Street, called for U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman to be fired for saying that Israel has the right to annex parts of the West Bank, Judea and Samaria. Friedman's remarks came in an interview with the New York Times on Friday. He said the following, quote, "Under certain circumstances, I think Israel has the right to retain some, but unlikely all, of the West Bank." So that's his statement. The Palestinian Authority, J Street, many others slamming Friedman for saying that he believes Israel has the right to retain some of Judea and Samaria. So on one hand, it's positive that Israel, according to Friedman, has the right to retain some of the land which we reacquired in the defensive war of survival 52 years ago this month. On the other hand, he says it's unlikely all of the land will be retained by Israel. So a little bit of a mixed message. I have mixed feelings on his statement, because it is my belief that all of Judea and Samaria should be under Israeli control. I do not like these hints indicating perhaps that Israel will be pressured to give away parts of Judea and Samaria. This could mean more Jews being thrown out of their homes. So this is a little bit troubling of a statement from Ambassador Friedman. And that being said, the other side, the Palestinian Authority and all those who side with them, including J Street and Peace Now or whatnot, they're upset by any mention of Israel's right to annex any part of Judea and Samaria. They're not in favor of any Jews in Judea. That's their policy. That's what they believe. They believe in a Judenrein state, a state without Jews. They think somehow that is just. They think that Jews do not belong in Judea. So that's been the top story over the last, 24 hours here in Israel. Friedman also slammed the Obama administration, which allowed the passage of a UN Security Council resolution in its waning days of office in 2016 that characterized the so-called settlements as a flagrant violation of international law. Friedman saying this gave credence to Palestinian arguments that the entire West Bank and East Jerusalem belong to them. So again, he is saying that not all of those areas belong to them, but then again, let's remember, and he says it here, certainly, quote, "certainly Israel is entitled to retain some portion of it," according to Friedman. So some, not all. Mixed feelings here. Mixed feelings on this statement. But then again, I'm hopeful that Israeli leaders, our leadership, will be the ones who determine what the fate will be of the communities in Judea and Samaria and the entire area of Judea and Samaria. I understand the U.S. is very much invested in this, and we'll see if any plan comes forward in light of the fact that Israel once again is going back to elections. But ultimately, I wish that our leaders would be stronger in stating their case and explaining that this is our decision to make. Hopefully that decision will be annexing all of Judea and Samaria. But nevertheless, of course, very influential there, Team Trump. And until now, let's be clear, they've done everything right until now. Let's see what happens as we go forward. Friedman also had harsh words for the Palestinian Authority for what he said was their attempt to sabotage the upcoming economic workshop in Bahrain. He said it's unfair the way Palestinians have described this as a bribe or as an attempt to buy off their national aspirations. It's not at all. It's an attempt to give life to their aspirations by creating a viable economy. He said that were it not for massive pressure and intimidation from the PA, Palestinian business people would attend the conference. So apparently this conference in Bahrain is still going forward. From what I saw this morning, Israel hasn't officially been invited. Apparently they're waiting for other Arab countries to confirm their participation. But PA business people will be, for the most part, staying at home. There are some that are going, but overall, the PA is basically insisting that that nobody under their control take part in this Bahrain conference. Now, at the same time, the J-Post reports Palestinians planning popular uprising against Trump's plan. Palestinians said on Sunday, so-called Palestinians, that they are planning a popular uprising later this month to protest U.S. President Donald Trump's upcoming plan for peace in the Middle East. Protests scheduled for June 25th and 26th will coincide with the launching of the workshop in Bahrain, where the U.S. administration plans to unveil the economic portion of its long-awaited peace deal. The PA leadership has called on Palestinians and Arabs to boycott the Bahrain conference. Now, what is troubling by this statement is the words popular uprising. Because what does that usually mean? That usually means terrorism. That usually means violence. So the U.S., let me get this straight. The U.S. is having an economic workshop in Bahrain, and the Palestinian Authority is talking about popular uprising, which means violence. So where is that violence going to be directed against? Who is that violence going to be directed against? Who is going to be the recipient of that violence or terror if, in fact, people listen to this? Israel. And that's what scares me. It's not like they're going to be protesting in Washington, D.C. When things like this happen, when other countries make declarations, the PA takes to the streets against Israel. And I'm not saying they should go protest in Washington either. The same PA which rejected any offer of statehood or any offer that Israel's put together over the years, always rejecting anything put forward. But nevertheless, they are turning against Israel in this so-called popular uprising because of a U.S. policy. So that's mind-boggling as well. Nevertheless, we need to be prepared here in Israel because popular uprising indicates the use of terror and violence against Israeli men, women, and children, God forbid. But we need to be prepared for anything that will be unleashed by the PA and certainly Hamas as a result of a suggested U.S. plan. That is the irony of it. Speaking of terror attacks, Israel National News reports this morning that May 2019 was the deadliest month in nearly 2 years. Terror attacks on Israelis tripled in May, even while attacks in Judea and Samaria decreased. 449 incidents in May compared to 126 in April. A lot of that as a result of the launching of hundreds of rockets from Gaza into Israel just last month. Man, time flies. But I mean, it was only just last month. 4 Israelis killed and others wounded in a wave of rocket attacks in May. 2 others stabbed in Jerusalem, 2 Israelis stabbed in Jerusalem. Terrorist attacks in Judea and Samaria, meanwhile, decreased by 43% from 88 to 50. But how many people actually know that this is our reality? In the month of May, there were 50 terror attacks in Judea and Samaria. 50. 50. Whether that's firebomb attacks or rock attacks or attempted who knows what. 50 attacks just in this region alone this past May, and that's an improvement from April, which is also mind-boggling. At the same time, Hebrew University is at it again. I always say stay classy, Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Some 20 scientists, as reported here by the Jerusalem Post, including an Israeli professor, wrote an open letter to the organizers of the 2019 International Physics Olympiad against holding its July competition in Israel. So here you have a Hebrew University. Apparently he's retired, but his information, I guess, is still on the Hebrew University website. Professor Emeritus Emmanuel Dror Farjun of the Einstein Institute of Math at Hebrew University in Jerusalem, signing a letter calling on the organizers of this physics competition not to come to Israel, to boycott Israel. An Israeli professor wanting these physics people to boycott Israel. The IPHO is the premier international physics competition for high school students, includes competitors from 80 countries. And here you have a Hebrew University professor who's lining himself with the BDS Israel haters and trying to encourage these students to boycott the state of Israel. Matan Peleg, CEO of the Zionist organization Im Tirtzu, expressed concern about Professor Farjun's signature on such a letter, saying while tremendous amounts of resources are invested in Israel and throughout the world to combat international BDS, there are professors at Hebrew U undermining these efforts by promoting BDS from within. Peleg told the Jerusalem Post. He said it is disgraceful that Hebrew U, which is supposed to be a beacon of academic light, has become a political incubator of anti-Zionist professors who devote their lives to attacking the state of Israel. Pretty sad. Pretty terrible. This is coming out of Hebrew U. You know, we talk about the situation on campus in the U.S. for Jewish students, Zionist supporters, but we have this here in Israel as well. The J-Post points out that earlier this month, Hebrew University professor Amiram Goldblum called pro-Israel student activists, quote, Nazi dogs, and threatened to prevent them from getting accepted to advanced degrees. This is a Hebrew University professor referring to pro-Israel activist students as Nazis, Nazi dogs. Unbelievable stuff there out of Hebrew University. And this is not the first time that we've seen these type of controversies initiated by professors at that institution. Pretty sad indeed. Turning to politics now, we are once again, believe it or not, in an election cycle here in Israel. September 13th, I believe, will be Israel's next election for the 22nd Knesset, after the 21st Knesset folded, with Prime Minister Netanyahu unable to form a coalition government. Israel Hayom this morning reports that senior blue and white official members, you're talking about Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid and the rest, they have analyzed results of the last election, which was just a few months ago, expressing disappointment with the party's failure to make significant inroads with right-leaning voters. So Blue and White is reportedly planning on shifting its campaign to the right, emphasizing candidates with security credentials likely to appeal to center-right voters. Because, as they say, in an election here in Israel, the top priority is security. So here you have Blue and White Party candidate Yoaz Hendel. He's a journalist, security expert, raised in El Kana, which is in Samaria, the Shomron. They are planning on, I guess, putting him at the forefront of the campaign, trying to encourage those who consider themselves to be right of center or right-leaning to vote for the blue and white party. The strategy in the last election was, which almost worked, was anybody but Netanyahu, and the blue and white got over 1 million votes, yet unable to form a coalition. Not enough, because the Israeli public is not left-leaning these days. Even though here they claim that they are now, they're going to be claiming that they are not a left-wing party. But Netanyahu, of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu, is stressing time and time again that they are really a left-wing party. Nevertheless, I think this is probably a smart strategy, as opposed to their attempts to smear Netanyahu and have that be at the forefront during the last election campaign. But time will tell if that, in fact, works with the voters, if more so-called right-leaning voters will, in fact, give blue and white a chance. And we're way off with this next election. I mean, September is, anything can happen. I mean, we saw this past election and the one before it go down to the very last day or two. And Netanyahu, the political genius, whether you like him or don't like him, and sometimes I do like him, and sometimes I am not crazy about his policies. Nevertheless, he is a political master, no doubt about it, pulling it off at the last minute, as he did in this past election and the one before it 4 years ago. So we shall see what happens. Moving on to other news, JNS reports friends of the IDF donate $60,000 to rebuild a synagogue destroyed by Hamas. FIDF supporters Fred and Jeanette Bogart of Boca Raton, Florida, and New York donated $60,000 to rebuild a synagogue on the IDF's Kisufim base, home to the 414th Nesher Field Intelligence Battalion and other infantry units. The synagogue, along with the Torah scroll used by soldiers, was destroyed by a Hamas rocket in early May in a barrage of fire into Israel that, as we said before, caused the deaths of 4 civilians. So here you have a very generous couple in the U.S. who will help rebuild a synagogue destroyed by Hamas. I did not see this synagogue destruction brought up at any relevant United Nations gathering or meeting. The fact that Hamas uses mosques and schools to fire their weapons and target Israeli men, women, and children, and here hitting a religious site, a synagogue. I didn't see this brought up by anybody in the social media world or on or I didn't see the UN go crazy about this. I mean, God forbid they should do so. Imagine if this was reversed and Israel, even if it was a self-defense measure, targeted a mosque where terrorists were hiding and the mosque had damage. It would be top story, no doubt, on all the international news channels. But this is the first time I'm seeing this here. In fact, I wasn't even aware that this synagogue was destroyed. So I guess that just shows you where the media is, the mainstream media is in all this. You know, thanks to JNS for pointing this out, and thank you, of course, to the family who's donating the money to rebuild the synagogue. We're going to finish up with 2 sports stories here out of Israel. 2 great stories. Israel's Dudi Sela won the inaugural Little Rock Open in Arkansas on Sunday, marking his first tournament win in 2 years. He's making a comeback from a long-term back injury. Sela, who's 34 years old, defeated a South Korean player. The Little Rock Open, a new tournament, is an ATP Challenger Tour event and marks Sela's 23rd competition win. He was ranked 208th in the world. He now is up to 160. So comeback for one of Israel's best tennis players ever, Dudi Sela. This is great news. In 2017, he reached the 4th round of Wimbledon for the second time, and he was ranked as high as 29th in the world. Hopefully he'll get back up there in the process of his comeback, now that it seems that he is healed from his injury. Also, one other sports story, 8-year-old Israeli Or Shatil wins second place in the European Chess Championship. This is amazing stuff. 8-year-old chess prodigy Or Shatil won second place in the European School Chess Championships, which took place in Romania. A press release reported on Sunday. He defeated a player from Azerbaijan who was undefeated at that point. Or Shatil, this is a young girl, by the way, 8 years old. She was able to do so while playing the black, giving her rival a slight edge. It's the player who uses white pieces gets to open the game and make the first move. This is a great story. Second place in Europe, an 8-year-old Israeli girl. And we should continue to have more success, whether it's in tennis or in chess or in judo or in any other sport around the world, representing Israel proudly. And of course, unfortunately, but as is the case in many of the sports, we've seen it in judo and in others, Israeli players, according to this report here by the J-Post, must at times face discrimination when matches are held in countries which are hostile to the Jewish state, or when players come from places like Iran and refuse to play against Israelis. We've seen this before in other international competitions, and that is the case with chess as well. But let's not let that get in the way of an 8-year-old Israeli young girl winning second place in the European Chess Championship. So that is a summary, a recap of the news here on Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It has been a while since we have spoken. My name is Josh Hasten, and it is Monday, the 10th of June, 2019, the 7th of Sivan, 5779, just a day after Shavuot in the U.S. and around the world. Outside of Israel, I should say, to be fair. Celebrating a second day of Shavuot today, so many of you hopefully will be listening to this podcast on Tuesday. I single out the U.S. because I know we have a lot of listeners in the U.S. Let me know where you're listening from. I think the U.S. is our top listenership, but if you're listening in other parts of the world, I want to hear from you as well. Get in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it's Joshua Hasten, or my page, Josh Hasten, Israel Advocacy and Journalism, on Twitter at Josh Hasten, and on Instagram. You can find me there as well. Shout out to Binyamin Bresky, engineer extraordinaire, and Tabitha Epstein for everything she does behind the scenes, and of course all the other wonderful hosts here on the Land of Israel Network. That's it. Signing out from a beautiful day here. It is, by the way, the weather is unbelievable here now. I was actually at the beach the other day. Beach season is officially open for me. Great time of year to be here in the Land of Israel. From Gush Etzion, signing out, most importantly, wherever you are in the wonderful world of ours, between now and when we speak again, please God, next Monday, be safe. Shalom, shalom, from Gush Etzion, Israel.
You know, it's not just a refinement of the Jews, and it's not just the strength of the Israelis now, but there is a whole world of the nations that are a part of this process, and they are being refined just as well, and they are going against the grain. With the rise of anti-Semitism, it's going to get harder and harder to stand.
And there's no running away from it either. I mean, there's nothing greater than living as a Jew, especially in our world today, where we see the ingathering of the exiles from all around the world. They're coming back to the Land of Israel. We have our own state. The technology, the innovation, the light that's coming out of the Jewish people in Israel is unparalleled. And that's part of what we're trying to broadcast here on the Land of Israel Network and share that message.
Israel Inspired with Ari Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.